Hey everybody, I'm Jake, and with me, as always, is Josh. And we've got a fun video today because on this channel there are examples of both of us being players and both of us being dungeon masters. Of course, I ran the Dragon of Icespire Peak, which was our very first playthrough here, and Josh is currently running Ancient Relics and Hokey Religions. And we both kind of are really proud of the work that we put in, both as players and as a dungeon master. And we wanted to talk about 7 attributes of a healthy game because we know what that looks like. So stick around. We got some good ones for you.
Hey everybody, welcome back to JNJtabletop. Jake and I were just talking about how much we loved Dragon of Icespire Peak and Ancient Relics and Hokey Religions, and both of those are really great examples of a healthy game. So if you want to check those out, check them out. We'll have links in the doobly-doo, which is the description if you don't know. But we kind of broke it down into a list, and that brought us to 7 attributes of a healthy game. Starting off our list, we have an active player chat outside the game. And I mean, there's multiple reasons why you could have one of these, whether it's the players are really interested in what's going on and they all want to talk about it and they want to plan their schemes and whatever. Or maybe you're just friends and you just want to chat outside the game.
There's just a desire to be together, even when you're not together, whether you're over a Discord call or Zoom or whatever you use or physically meeting. There's just something about it that's missing when you're apart.
If you're the DM, just expect to be excluded from that. That's probably, it is what it is. It is what it is. That's how it was. I'll say this. When we played Dragon of Icespire Peak, we had 2 Discord chats. One was called Dragon of Icespire Peak, and the other one I named Dragon of Icespire Speak. And it was...
I didn't know that.
And it was everyone except for Jake, because Jake was the DM and we didn't want him to know about our specific plans.
The funny thing about that, actually, to me, is a lot of players are like, "Well, you can't let the DM know what you're thinking. You know, they're gonna thwart the plan that we're coming up with." And it's like dungeon masters literally will sit there for an hour listening to players plan something and then have to pretend they don't know what's going on when they run the game.
It's a funny thought to have too, right? Because one of these attributes, right? Like you don't want the player, you don't want the DM to know what the player's thinking, but what's another attribute that's kind of contradictory to that?
Yeah, is that you're gonna give the DM a little direction as to what the group is gonna do next. And the funny thing is we're making fun of ourselves because this is a practice that we participate in, and
Yeah.
it's funny how that kind of works that way. But yeah, the DM getting a little heads up as to what's going on next is huge. We have a video that we put together on player prep and how they can kind of really help the dungeon master's sanity when it comes to some of this stuff.
It's like there's levels to it, right? Like you don't have to let the DM know that you're planning on using the dust of sneezing and coughing, but you should let the DM know that, like, hey, hey DM, you gave us like 3 interesting hooks. We're deciding between these 2 that we want to go after, so that they don't have to plan for everything.
Make 7. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But Josh, another attribute that I think is really important is that the players believe that their choices matter. Now, I know we have a video on player agency, and yes, this video is in somewhat a shameless plug of like so much content that we have on the channel. So if you're liking this video or those videos, hit the thumbs up, all the things, subscribe, bell, say hi to us in the comment section. But yeah, player agency I feel like is actually a situation where I really admire your work as a DM. So how do you kind of go about making sure that the players have agency and also can feel that at the table?
The base level of it, like to simplify it as much as you possibly can. I think the way that like you and I have talked about it before is like the DM doesn't necessarily, they prepare like situations, but they don't necessarily prepare solutions. If I'm making like a video game, then everything is like a solution. I need to have this is your recipe. If I'm trying to give you a situation so that you could do your own thing in it, I'm like, this is the key that we're playing this song in, but you have all of this room to do whatever with it. You don't have to follow this specific chord progression.
Really like
You've
that
heard.
analogy, by the way.
Thank you, thank you. But it's like jazz. Good games are like jazz. Something that you heard me say, and I feel like I haven't said this in a while, and that makes me sad, but I'm going to say it again right now. When you have agency and when your players' choices matter, the world feels more alive, it feels more real, and your players, if the world is real to them, they're more immersed in it. They're going to care about it. And if they care about it, they're going to engage more with it. They're going to have a more fulfilling experience. You're going to have a more fulfilling experience as a DM because they're going to be interested in engaging with what you're preparing. And just everyone's going to have a good time or a better time.
Yeah.
So agency is really, really, really important.
But if the world feels more real to your players, it gives them a role to play in it and how it's shaped, which gives them a sense of ownership. It becomes special. I like the way you phrased that with the musical analogy, but I also was just thinking like you present situations and not necessarily solutions. You can also present like a resource or two there that if you think get creative with, maybe they don't, but it's not like the only way. And
Yeah.
that's I think the biggest thing.
On the concept of immersion and the game being real and all of that sort of thing, there is like a balance, right?
You could find tables that it's like everybody is like full method actor, like every situation is serious no matter what. Like one of my favorite moments of kind of stopping to smell the roses, if you will, was when you gave us the direction to grandmother's house. And like the way you did this like weird thing that kind of made it not sound exactly the way it sounded, and I was just like, there's got to be a moment where I'm on the video and I'm like, hold on. So you're telling me the way we get to the grandmother's house is we go over the river and then through the woods? And you're like, uh-huh. I'm like, all right, like that's clearly there for us to enjoy ourselves. It's a freaking game. You're supposed to laugh. You're supposed to have a good time. And
Well,
I,
if you
I
laugh
think,
and have a good time, you're going to break immersion.
well, that's just crazy talk. No, I think when the concept of immersion comes along, it's and we're not talking about like say like a paramedic that's in your game that's on call or something like that, but like you're not on your phone, you're present, you're in the moment, and whether that's laughing at something that happened or maybe there's something dramatic happened and you're just kind of taking that in, whatever it looks like at your table, it's immersive. You're together, you're not distracted, and I think that's one of the biggest things I think to really
Yeah,
focus on is when you're together, make that time count.
absolutely. Like you have to be intentional about that. Like you went there to play a game together, and when you're there, the main thing you're doing should be playing a game together. Whether that's laughing about what's happening in the game or being that heavy role playing and like I am my character and this is what I'm saying. Like whatever that means for you. But
Yep.
give people the respect they deserve. Everybody took time out of their day. Everyone's busy now. So if people are making time for you, then give them the respect they deserve.
So the next attribute that we have to talk about is that everyone is just excited to see what happens next. That could kind of feel like it's similar to the agency one that we talked about, but why is it different and why is that important?
It's very similar to the agency, but it's more like a result of agency. When there's tension and things going on that matter, and there's immersion and all of these things, something you get is you want to know what happens next. You're looking forward to that next session, to that next episode. Especially if you're a jerk like me and you like to end sessions in cliffhangers.
Gosh, you've had some doozies. Watch Ancient Relics and Cookie Religions. You don't have to wait weeks at a time. The playlist is all there. You'll be fine.
But you can wait. You can be like, you know what? They had to wait a week after this cliffhanger. Maybe I will too.
Sure.
So everyone being excited to see what happens next is really just evidence that agency, immersion, ownership, all of those things are there. People are invested and they want to know what happens next. And that's just the way it is.
Some things will never change.
So we are nearing the end of our list here. And this next one is really going to tie into the previous one about everyone being excited to see what happens next. And you may have noticed a lot of these kind of tie into each other. And what does that really mean? Well, to me, it means these are all elements of the same healthy game. People are excited about what happens next. People also pick up on, players specifically, they pick up on things that are happening and little clues and tidbits that the DM gives, even if a lot of time has passed.
It's related to foreshadowing, which is an art that I think people use it without realizing it, but also when it's deliberately done can be just chef's kiss. You might be listening to this right now and feeling like, oh, okay, so I have to have like this entire thing planned out from beginning to end. And I think it's always good to have just at least a framework or an idea, maybe is more accurate than a framework for how something's going to be. But just pay attention to the things that happen. If your players do something fun, they do something that might be small, at least in that moment, but you think, oh, that could be very significant later on. Write it down. Write it down.
This just circles right back to agency. When you're a DM and your players have agency and like you're watching them get excited about things or make certain choices that you might not have expected them to make, you just take those things, you just grab them, and then at some point just throw them back out into there. Like, remember when you did this thing? And then they're like, I did that thing and it mattered. Or like, you know, or like, I saw that person. I remember that, you know, like
The player's like, oh yeah, I remember. Hold on, I wrote this down, and they start like flipping through notes or whatever, you know, like that's.
it's one of the most rewarding things as a DM watching players put like two and two or you know whatever together, and like you see them with like that meme of all the equations and stuff, and you see the look on their face, and you're like, I made them do that, and do they care? And that's why they're doing that.
Yep, it's all related, just like you said. So we haven't really talked about one of the pillars of D&D, which we have a video on this, which you're going to see a little card flap up right above my shoulder. And that's, you know, combat is one of the biggest reasons why people play. It's huge. But it's sometimes people can look at combat like it's just this, oh, I move my pieces around the board like you're playing chess or checkers or whatever you like. And I feel like when the combats are kind of engaging in a way that's not just like, oh, overcome this thing, or you know, there's tactics to it, there's role playing, there's resource management and decision points that are significant. So Josh, what do you how do you try and add that to your game as a DM and as a player too, I guess?
There have to be stakes in it more than just death. Combat, it's all part of the story in it, and in and of itself, a good combat can be a story, right? Like it's not just attacks or attacks on resources, attacks. You know what I mean? Whatever, both of them work. Um, but it's not just like a you have to do this thing before you can get to the next step, right? It's not like just this roadblock that's like, "Ah, all right, let's just get through this and do it. It in and of itself is a big thing, especially if your story is important, and things that the characters are going through are important. Then your combat, there's going to be more diversity in it. You know, maybe it's a race against time. Maybe you have to save someone. Maybe you would need to kill a dragon so that you could get access to some sort of portal thing so you could leave town. And it's like this stress of, I don't want to do this thing, but I have to do this. And it gets thrown upon you. And now it's, how do I kill this dragon before it kills Echo, who is riding on top of this dragon? It's,
Yeah.
I just wanted to get through the Savalier Wood, but now I see that this hag is making life miserable for everyone in these woods, and maybe this is going to reverse the corruption, you know? So maybe, just maybe, I could do this and something will happen, and somehow it'll help for players to be thinking like that's like the role playing sense. But really, this is there's so much to combat. Everything that I just said had to do more with role playing, but we didn't even talk about tactics or resource management.
The thing that I love about that, because role playing does tie into that, but it's just another opportunity and avenue that a player can express what's important to them, whether
Yes.
that's survival, whether that's, you know, greed, you know, like it's one of those things that it's just I remember I think it was the second episode of Ancient Relics, and like it was subtle, and we were trapped in an alley, and Vale was in the back, but we got surrounded. So he turned around and he went into the middle of the alleyway because it was important for him to block off that way for them to come after the group. It was so small, but because of that and because you surrounded, I was like, ooh, Vale would try and protect that way instead. Like it was
Yeah.
it was a fun way to express that. It made Vale more real to me. It made the situation more real, I think, to everybody involved, and I just loved it. And it was subtle, but it just adds so much.
That is an art that is lost a lot of the time, and or just something that people don't think about combat in that sense. And if you want the perfect example of it, in my opinion, I think we have great players, and just we have really talented friends who are amazing players and people who are fun to play with. But watch Izzy in either Ancient Relics and Hoki Religions or Dragon of Icespire Peak. Two very different characters. Um,
Yeah,
but watch what she does in combat in each of those characters. Very different
spot on.
approaches, but exactly, she is telling you a story about who her character is based on the choices that she's making in combat, based on the, I have this thing and I could do this damage, but I need to heal this person or buff this person and make sure, and I only have this many slots left, but I'm going to do it because I want to make sure they're boosted. I want to be helpful to them.
Or
Or
even I'm
the
gonna stand in front of the guy with the halberd, even though it puts us more in danger because
Yeah.
I'm gonna protect my friend. It was, yeah, no, she's a master at that.
I think I mentioned this in our video that we did on combat encounters. Speaking to tactics, there's something that hasn't aired yet, and we really need to finish this thing so we could air it so you guys could see what we're talking about. But the sequel to Dragon of Icefire Peak, we started playing that campaign, and Jake put together this encounter that was like, partially something that was written in the book, and partially just the way that he presented it. But there was so much with like, I need to make sure I'm keeping these people away and saving these kids, and I'm jumping across this thing filled with water to now the only move I'm doing is just making sure I keep this giant water elemental monster thing away from Michael so that it doesn't engulf him or engulf both of us. And like, that's what I'm focused on. And then also, Izzy is drowning and we need to save her because we're running out of time. Like there's just like when you have levels to that and all of those things, it's like there's role play involved. There's so much tactics involved because you really have to prioritize like, what am I going to do?
All while making the
Just
players feel cool.
yeah.
It's like you get access to these new feats and abilities and things, and you want to make sure that they can use them with experience. That's going to be, something that you can grow in. But this is definitely a very clear principle that is present when you have a game that's healthy. Is the combats are more than just a straightforward, I'm going to line up my team, you're going to line up your team, and we're going to fight each other. It's like, oh, okay, well, that can also be fun, but this is also a role playing game. So that's where that goes. So, of course, these are elements that we think are important to a healthy game. But of course, this is also not an exhaustive list. And we'd love to hear from you what you think makes a healthy game, as well as maybe tell us about a game you thought was your favorite or was healthy and all that good stuff in the comment section below. Once again, of course, like button, subscribe. We have a ton of tips to help get you get the most out of your games, and we would love to hear from you. So, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.
This is kind of like that meme where where they put like the "This is Sparta" head. It's like in the car.
Yeah, Night at the Roxbury.
Welcome back to J&J Tabletop. As you may have understood from the intro, um, I love Ancient Relics and Hoki Religions. I love that game. I love DMing it, and I loved playing in Dragon of Ice Fire Peak, and I loved how Jake ran it, and he did too. um, and and that's how we got to step number one, which is not exactly step number one because there's no particular order to these. But what do you think the first thing in our list is? Let me do that again. Do you want me to start from the beginning, or can we? No, okay.
Unless you feel like you'd like to.
I don't think I'd do unless it's easier for you if I do.
Now I'm confused.
So, like, the real version of that song is so disappointing to me because the first one I ever heard was Tupac's version of it, which is just so much better.